In this podcast, two Gen Xers are taking a trip down memory lane, revisiting and reflecting on the cinema of the 1980s. We'll look at the hits and the flops, the studio blockbusters and art house indies, the critically acclaimed, and the universally reviled. The series is hosted by me, Lisa Molinelli, a writer and librarian, and features Dustin Morrow, a filmmaker, author, and professor of film. So pull on your legwarmers, crank up your boombox, and hop in the DeLorean. It's time for the long rewind.
Hey, this is the long rewind. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin. I'm joined as ever by Lisa.
Hey, everybody, welcome back.
And in this episode, we're tackling the back half of 1980. So, again, if you're new to the podcast, which you must be because this is one of our earliest episodes.
Podcast is new to us.
Yeah. We're splitting each year into two parts. We're doing January through June in one episode. And then in a part two, we're tackling the back half of each year. So we're in the back half of 1980 here. And we're going to use a similar format to what we did looking at the front half. We're going to look at films that we think kind of defined the year or that were sort of important or influential for defining the 1980s and 1980s cinema. We're going to look at some of the more unsung gems, some of our favorite movies or movies we think that are worth your time that are maybe not as well remembered from that era. We'll look at rewindable moments, those are some of our favorite scenes or individual moments from these films. I might do a quick run through sort of so bad it's good movies or some of the B movies, just because I have a passion for those kinds of movies personally. We're going to wrap up by talking about what the Oscars did that year, what audiences did that year by looking at the top box office. And we'll give you we'll count down very quickly our own personal top 10s from the year 1980. So let's start, Lisa, with the really important films in 1980.
Okay, would you like
Which is not always, as we should say, the biggest box office hits or the films that won the most Oscars. Like, we're thinking about movies that, we now have like a 30 or 40 year period of time in which to look back on this era. And so we can tell you, and this is not going to surprise anybody that's a fan of films, that the movies that were hits or the movies that won even Best Picture for that year didn't necessarily have any cultural staying power.
Right. We're looking at influential films too, or things that might have started a craze, or whatever.
Yeah, or just
too.
films that in some ways were reflective of the culture of the 1980s and assist us in kind of a broader discussion of what was going on in politics and just culture in the 1980s. So why don't you start, Lisa? What were some of your important films? I bet we had some of the same ones.
Yeah, well, Airplane.
Yep.
I think that was maybe the first one in the calendar or something. Airplane.
Yeah,
hilarious.
It's a movie I've seen in multiple polls done by like magazines. I think Entertainment Weekly did one. Mm-hmm. I remember Premiere did one a long time ago. It was a cinema magazine in Britain somewhere that did one. Polls of the funniest movies ever made, man. And Airplane is always the number one movie. And I don't know if that's just because of its ratio of like running time to gags. It certainly like maybe has more jokes in it than any other movie that I can think of. I mean, that
may be true.
The Zucker brothers, right?
Yeah.
Who did Police Squad and then did The Naked Gun, which was based on Police Squad, which are very similar films. Top Secret, I think, was also done by them, and it has also a very similar kind of anarchy approach to comedy. Like, just let's throw as many jokes at the wall as we can.
But also even some wordplay in a way, right? They're very silly, but they are hilarious. I mean, Airplane is something that's endlessly quotable. I think it'll have a lot of rewindable moments for that reason.
A couple small things it did, which are kind of interesting that maybe people don't know about, is that it took a big chunk of its script directly verbatim from an old B movie that Leslie Nielsen was also in, which was a serious, can't remember the name of it, easily Googleable if anybody wants to find out. But it was a Leslie Nielsen action drama set on an airplane. It was like a disaster movie. And much of the dialogue from that movie just got ported into Airplane and
funny.
delivered with tongue in cheek.
Yeah, just goes
but
to
with
show
no
you,
changes,
right?
and reads now as a comedy. It also sort of like launched or revived / ruined Leslie Nielsen's career in some ways because he was never really able to do
like serious stuff.
anything else after this. And before Airplane, he was an actor who could, was kind of a character actor who did a lot of different stuff.
Well, that's what
ruined it to the point where, like, if you see him in old movies now and you see him show up, it's kind of hard to watch him in serious parts.
I was gonna say, as a child of the 80s who actually hadn't seen Leslie Nielsen in anything other than Airplane and the Zucker brother movies, that's all I knew him from. So it was sort of blew my mind later to find out that he was, in serious movies.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's that effect. It had that on me for sure. But he's real funny in these movies, and they're very funny.
He did some that were sort of like to diminishing returns toward the end of his career, which was kind of sad.
They maybe
like
did
Dracula
go on,
Dead and Loving It.
Right,
And
they did go on a little too long.
Yeah.
But that's another reason this movie's on this list is because it does start kind of a trend. You saw a lot of these movies, I think, in the 80s.
Yeah.
It also had a lot of famous people in it, like cameos, kind of. I don't know if you'd call them cameos, but Barbara Billingsley is in it, and who else? There's quite a few recognizable.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
That's what I was
Peter
trying to think
Graves.
of. Yeah, just a lot of recognizable
Robert
folks.
Hayes, Julie Haggerty.
And it's also patterned on the disaster movie, right, of the 70s.
Yeah, it was a spoof of the disaster movies. I mean, part of what makes it really stand out as a comedy is, unlike a lot of spoofs, you don't have to know those movies at all.
Oh yeah,
the first time I saw Airplane, I didn't know the disaster. I hadn't seen Poseidon Adventure yet, or
right.
I certainly hadn't seen any of the airport movies, which are the movies that are most directly spoofed by Airplane. You don't need to have seen those for it to be funny. Here's a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's inarguable that it holds up and that it's still fun to watch to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I must watch it like once every other year, maybe.
I think we watched it pretty recently within the last few months. Yeah.
But we know, every joke that's coming. In fact, you can kind of recite them almost.
Yep.
So why does it hold up? Like, why is it still fun to watch a movie when the nature of a joke is that it's built on surprise. It's built on subverting your expectation of what the kind of correct response to something should be. That's what makes something funny. Right. If you're thinking about it from kind of a psychological standpoint. So why, if you know the thing, why is it still fun to watch?
That's sort of a philosophical question to some degree. I mean, this isn't really answering your question, but one thing I thought about with this movie is how I watched it many times over decades at different ages. And it made me laugh at all those ages, right? So like it made me laugh as a little kid and it makes me laugh now as an adult. So maybe there's something to that, I can get different things out of it at different ages. It definitely has a lot of sort of slapsticky, and that still can be funny as an adult. Let's not kid ourselves. That can still be funny slapstick, but that's really funny to a kid who's not going to get the more subtle, word-based jokes, right? But then you might get the word-based jokes a little bit more as an adult, or the more salacious jokes or whatever. So I don't know, maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just really good performing, really good timing. I mean, the last time we watched it, I hadn't seen it in a long time, so there maybe was some surprise for me and some, stuff I had forgotten. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have a correct answer to that question, other than like, maybe there's just something to, like playing a greatest hits album.
Yeah, well, it's like watching Monty Python,
Yeah, exactly. You know every second of your favorite songs, but it doesn't mean they're less fun to listen to.
Or that you like them any less.
If nothing else, they're more fun, right? Because you know them so well. Also, there's like a comfort level.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true for me. Like the 80s is my favorite era of cinema, and it's probably no coincidence that it's the era in which I was a little kid.
Right.
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 So,
Yeah.
When you're a little kid and you're discovering films and you're a budding young film lover, just the event of finding any movie feels kind of magical. And like movies, you get lost in movies and absorbed in movies in a way that you don't as you get older. I can never love any movie that I discover now as much as I love some of these movies that I, discovered as a kid. I mean, we'll talk about the lens of nostalgia, I'm sure, multiple times as we kind of go through these years and talk about some of these movies. A lot of these movies, it's just impossible for me and for, I think, anyone who loves film to separate your experience of the discovery of the movie from the quality of the movie itself.
That's true.
There's a good number of these movies that I absolutely adore. I'll probably talk about a couple of them in this episode that are maybe not the greatest movies, but like I love them. Like I love them more than I love most people.
Well, but I'll maintain that there is something to be said for the way you would appreciate something you loved as a kid as an adult, and you'll see different things in it. And so it might become richer to you even as an adult because you're seeing different things from a more adult perspective.
Yeah.
So I don't think there is the lens of nostalgia, but I think there's something to be said for even being able to appreciate it as an adult too.
Yeah. I will say that the second film on my list is another comedy.
Yep, mine too.
I love more now than I did as a kid, and I think it's because I just get more of what
you're an
it's
adult.
doing.
You get the adult jokes.
Which is Caddyshack.
Yep, that was mine too. Yep.
Which is, one of the greatest, if not the greatest sports comedy ever made. And one thing I realized, and I think you and I have talked about this, having watched this a few times in recent years, how when you're younger or when you first come to that movie, like it's all Bill Murray and Chevy Chase. Like that's what makes that movie. And now that I've seen it as an adult, and the gopher, the gopher puppet, Lisa's favorite. Lisa loves the gopher. She does an amazing impression of the gopher. You should all know that. Is Ted Knight.
Yeah. I knew that was going to come up. Yeah.
Ted Knight is the funniest part of that movie. He's hilarious in that movie.
Talking about an unsung or a hidden gem. I mean, he's unsung.
The part where he's waiting for
I was
Michael
hoping
O'Keefe
this would
character
come up.
to putt, and he's like,
yeah.
Like
I put that in my rewindable moment.
I still almost fall on the floor laughing from that scene. Like he's hilarious.
His anger is very
I mean,
funny.
Rodney's funny and Bill's funny and Chevy's funny too, but like Ted Knight's the unsung hero of that movie.
Yeah.
And I never would have gotten that as a kid watching that
because he's the old stodgy guy when you're a kid, right?
He's like the straight man in some ways, right?
Yeah, but then you kind of get it. Yeah, he's amazing. That was my second also.
I mean, it's an incredible movie. It holds up. It's still funny. One of my rewindable moments that I would pick is the scene where Chevy plays through Bill's shack. He's playing a game of golf at night, and he golfs through Bill's shack.
Right.
And it was a famous scene. I guess it was a scene that was added right at the end of the shoot, or maybe even a reshoot when they realized they didn't have any scenes between those two guys together, the two SNL heroes.
That was going to be expected
together, and so it was kind of thrown in. It was 100% improvised, and you can tell, but it's so funny, and it's just such a great scene of like two of the greatest comic actors we've ever had, just like punching at the top of their, like just
at the top of their game. Yeah. Did you tell me that Bill Murray improvised all his dialogue in that? Is that correct? All of his
according
dialogue
to
in that
Ivan
movie?
Reitman.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of rewindable I had some rewindable moments from that movie, and we can save them for later.
I mean, the whole movie is rewindable.
It's
every scene. I mean, the same thing of Airplane, right? Like I was just thinking, like, there's got to be I've got to pick a rewindable moment from Airplane, and like, what's your favorite Airplane scene? I mean, it could be almost anything. I finally settled on the disco flashback when he first meets Elaine, and
Well, and see, there's a moment where I can appreciate it more as an adult because I didn't really know what Saturday Night Fever was when I first saw that movie, like as a kid. So now they're spoofing Saturday Night Fever.
Did you have a rewindable moment from Airplane?
Oh yeah, I had quite a few.
What'd you pick?
I had a few. Well, there's always just the endlessly classic quotable "Don't call me Shirley."
Yeah.
Barbara Billingsley talking jive.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Not just talking jive, but she's a jive translator.
oh gosh,
That's
I'd
the best
forgotten
part.
that. Yeah.
Because the stewardess doesn't understand what the jive talking guy is saying,
Yeah.
and Barbara Billingsley's like, "Excuse me, ma'am, but I speak jive." And he's
Right.
like, she could be of service.
And of course, for those of you who don't know, Barbara Billingsley was the mom on Leave It to
Yeah.
Beaver.
And
So
Nanny on
nanny
Muppet
on for
Babies.
those of us who are 80s kids.
Speaking of the
Yeah.
80s.
So, of course, there's a joke there too that I didn't fully understand as a kid that I get more now. Um, the singing stewardess kind of slowly killing
Yeah.
Vicky from the Love Boat.
Yeah.
I don't know. Those are some I could remember. There's so many in Airplane that I don't quite remember very well. You probably have more, but
Yeah.
those were some that I had
Yeah.
from
So I
Airplane.
had one other comedy in my
Mhm.
important films or quintessential
Yeah.
films of the year list,
Mhm.
which was 9 to 5,
Oh yeah. Of
which
course,
is
I
a
had that too.
feminist classic,
Super important
right?
movie.
It's
Yeah.
a movie that Jane Fonda produced and shepherded into fruition
Mhm.
and recruited Lily and Dolly to star
Yeah.
in,
Lily Tomlin
and
and Dolly
was
Parton. Mhm.
just obviously completely groundbreaking for its time. And there was a
Yeah.
lot of discussion about women's role in the
Yep.
workplace and
Equal pay,
equal
etc.
pay for
The
equal
ERA.
work,
Yeah. Mhm.
and yeah, and all the stuff that those women do for that office once they have kidnapped their boss and taken
The
him out of
wonderful Dabney
commission.
Coleman.
Yeah, Dabney Coleman.
Yeah.
Is essentially like a laundry list of like the
Yeah.
stuff that women in the workplace were fighting for at that time.
Yeah.
But what makes that movie work? I mean, on paper, just describing it, like that could be an insufferably preachy
Sure.
political thing, but like
It's the opposite.
I love this
Yeah.
movie as a kid, and I didn't
Yeah,
get any of that
we didn't know
subtext because
anything
I didn't
about it
know
as
any of that
kids.
stuff.
Right. Right.
It isn't even subtext; it's text. But like,
Yeah, you're right.
but it's just a funny
Yeah.
movie. All three women are hilarious in
Yeah.
it, and Dabney Coleman is, steals the whole movie in some ways.
Yeah,
And
I mean, he's another, maybe an unsung hero of that movie because, of course, you're not really supposed to focus on him, but
Yeah.
he does a great job in that
it
movie.
might also be the first movie where Dolly Parton became a movie star.
Is that right? Yeah, I mean, she's an amazing presence.
I think
in
it
that movie.
is. I can't think of what would have preceded that. And I feel like I've
Yeah,
heard
that
the
sounds
story
right.
that like she
Sounds
was
right.
kind of recruited into the movie by Jane Fonda, and she was
Yeah.
like, "I'm not an actress. I don't know
Right.
what I'm doing here."
That
And
sounds right.
but man, she's unbelievable in it.
Well, and
Like,
of course,
it's just,
writes and performs the title song, which we all love, know and
Yeah.
love.
yeah, it's a
Um,
great movie.
Yeah, it's a huge, important movie of that year, I
Yeah.
think. I also put for comedies, I don't know this movie well or really at all, but Stir Crazy, I put
Mhm.
because I think there's maybe some influentialness there. I mean, that's Richard Pryor and
Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder, and they did a lot of movies together, so I thought that was of note.
Yeah, it was a big hit. I can't remember a lot about it. They go to prison in it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a monster hit. They end up in chicken suits for some reason.
Yeah,
It's been
that's
a
the
long
one
time.
thing I remember.
It's been a long time since I've seen
Yeah,
it. I think it's
don't-
generally
yeah.
regarded as like the best movie that they
Yeah.
made together. They made about 5 movies
Okay,
together.
yeah, they
and
made a
I
lot.
think it's generally considered the best one.
Mostly, I just wanted to mention that was maybe a sub trend. I mean, they did all these movies together.
Yeah,
and
they were a
it's-
bit of like a Hope and Crosby team for a while.
and they're
They were a
both really
comedy team.
amazing comics and actors.
Yeah, they were funny
so,
together.
Worth a mention.
Yeah. So we mentioned this in the first episode addressing 1980, so we don't need to dwell on it. But Heaven's Gate
I put it. Yeah.
was a very important film in 1980,
Yep.
just because it killed the Western for one thing for almost the entire
Oh,
decade,
right.
and it was just a lesson in sort of, it was one of the last nails in the coffin of the great era of auteurist
Yeah.
cinema that was the 1970s, of
and maybe-
giving big
yeah.
amounts of money to risk-taking
Right.
directors like Coppola, Scorsese, De Palma, and
Mhm.
letting them make extremely personal, very expensive films.
Remind people why, though. If you didn't hear the first episode, why did Heaven's Gate do all that? Why is it the nail in the coffin? Why? What happened with it?
Well, just because of that. I mean, it was a big budget Western.
Yep.
It was a very personal film to Michael Cimino, who made The Deer
director.
Hunter a few
Uh-huh.
years earlier and had a lot of success with that. And it just completely tanked. and
lost a lot
and
of
was
money.
considered a really bad movie. The revisionist kind of look at it as herald it as something of a masterpiece that it, like, I think Criterion put it out, and there's a director's cut that added like another 2 hours to an already long movie, and now it's considered a great Western. But at the time,
Just wasn't the time
especially in the
for it.
truncated version that the studio released, it was
Ah.
considered a real turkey, and it lost a lot of money, and it didn't kill, but it really impeded a lot of those movies from getting made after it.
Yeah, it's
And
not that
certainly
didn't
hurt the
happen
Western.
again, but not in the 80s. So have you seen Heaven's Gate? I definitely haven't.
I have.
You have?
The director's cut is worth watching. It's like 4+ hours long.
Wow. How long was it originally when it came out?
Like 2.5 maybe.
Okay, so that
It
was super long
much
for
shorter.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's a little dull.
Okay.
I don't. It's not something I would sit down to watch. It's not one of my favorite Westerns by any means, but it's beautiful looking.
I mean, I just
It
don't
kind
know.
of killed Michael Cimino's career.
Yeah,
you know?
that's a shame. I mean, I only know it as a flop, so I was curious to hear from someone who'd actually seen it.
Yeah. I mean, unlike Howard's Duck or Ishtar, which are the other two big flops from the 80s that I mentioned in the first episode, it's a good movie. Can't say that about
it's
those
an
movies.
actual good movie. Yeah. Interesting.
The only other movie I had was Raging Bull.
Yeah, me too.
Famous for a number of reasons. One, it's often selected in critics' polls as the single best movie of the 1980s.
Yeah.
It's often considered like Scorsese's true masterpiece, which is saying something given his career.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it's the first movie, I think, that was heavily spoken about for the way in which De Niro sacrificed his body for the part.
Explain to us what this is a
he
boxing
gained
movie,
all this.
right?
The famous story is that he
boxer.
gained all this weight. Like he went on a tour of Italy where he just ate a bunch of carbs every day.
Boy, that's the way to do it. If you got to do it, you might
but
as
then
well
he had
do
to
it
take it all
right.
off and get in great shape. And
Right.
so other actors have done that famously since then.
Sure.
Christian Bale in The Machinist looks like he's
dying,
a sandwich away from death. But
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a boxing movie, right?
It is a boxing movie. It's a true story of Jake LaMotta.
Right.
It is a great movie. The editing in it is amazing. The black and white photography is amazing. It's just no fun to watch. Beyond, actually, that's not even true. There are a lot of movies that I love that are really depressing.
Yeah.
And they're kind of fun to watch anyway because the vividness of the filmmaking is so incredible that it overcomes the depressingness of the story.
Yeah.
I would say like Taxi Driver is one of those movies.
Another Scorsese.
Taxi Driver is a very downbeat, depressing movie. And I love watching it because it's just
fantastic.
such a vibrant, like pulsing movie. It's amazing. It's amazing to watch. Raging Bull doesn't do that for me personally. Like I find the story so grim that that it doesn't overcome the pleasure in watching the great filmmaking aspect of it. Doesn't overcome how much it bums me out.
Yeah.
So I've seen it many times. I don't watch it a lot.
Yeah.
It's not going to make my top 10, even though it's a masterpiece.
It's a movie I feel I should see. I love Scorsese. I admire him very much. I feel like I should see it. Of course, I've probably been avoiding it for that reason.
Yeah, you should watch it.
But I should see
once,
it. Yeah,
just to have seen it at least.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about it.
Did you have anything else in the kind of?
I put one more movie, but I haven't seen it, and I don't know a lot about it, so I may be off kilter here. I put Ordinary People, but maybe you probably know a lot more about it than I do. So maybe
it won the Oscar for
which we'll
picture.
Talk about later.
It won director over Scorsese, which is considered one of the great robberies in Oscar history. That Redford won over.
I mean, I love Robert
Scorsese.
Redford, but Scorsese, come on.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. It's very depressing.
Okay. What's it about? I don't even really know what it's about.
It's about like an all-American kid who kills himself and how it affects his family. It turns the mom, who's played by Mary Tyler Moore, basically into ice, and so she neglects and hates her husband and her other kid.
Oh, good Lord.
Timothy Bottoms plays Timothy Hutton plays the the other son, and he goes to
Oh.
therapy. And Donald Sutherland, I think, is the husband.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good movie. It's punishingly sad.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick between Raging Bull and Ordinary People, it sounds like I'll be watching Raging Bull. I don't know if I'll. That sounds a little rough.
Neither one's a
for
good
me.
time, but yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's a great movie. I'm not speaking against it. That sounds rough for me. But yeah.
So, a couple of my favorite movies of all time it showed up in my unsung
This is
gems
the fun
list,
part of
and
the
I'll
this
start
is
with
fun stuff.
I'll
in
start
here.
with two
Okay.
my two favorites here.
Yeah.
One is for me, and this is gonna be my favorite movie of the year, because it's one of my favorite movies of the 80s. It's the single most romantic movie I've seen in my whole
Yes.
life, which is Somewhere in Time.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one
so
is
wonderful.
the sci-fi masterpiece Flash Gordon,
Yeah.
which I love.
Yeah. Those are both on my, hidden gems list. Absolutely. I love Somewhere in Time. It's so wonderful. You introduced me to it. You want to tell the folks tell the folks a little about Somewhere in Time if they don't
It's
know.
based on a book called Bid Time Return by the great science fiction writer Richard Matheson.
Yes.
And it's about a man who falls in love with a photograph of a woman, so much so that he wills himself back in time to be with her.
Well, and tell the good people who the man and the woman are in this.
It's
a wonderful movie.
It's Christopher Reeve plays the playwright who travels in time, and Jane Seymour is the actress from the 1910s that he goes back to fall in love with, and it's set entirely on Mackinac Island off of Michigan.
Yes.
And it's just the whole movie is shot in this kind of like very soft focus, gauzy,
hazy, beautiful
photography. Yeah. It has the most beautiful score ever written for any film ever, period, by John Barry.
Beautiful.
And if anyone doesn't like it, then I don't want to know you.
It's a dreamy, heartrending, romantic, beautiful movie, and it's fun to see. I mean, if you haven't seen Christopher Reeve and stuff other than like Superman, it's really, I think, fun to see him.
He's great in it.
He's wonderful.
Yeah, he's really great in it. They're both great in it.
Oh, they're great. They're so great. You can just return to this movie again and again and again. Yeah, you can actually go to that hotel that's in the movie too.
Yeah.
Is it the Grand Hotel?
Yeah.
They have a Somewhere in Time like conference, I think, every year where people dress up.
There's a fan club.
Yep.
Which back in the day when they would still like Xerox the thing and send them out. I used to be a member of this fan club.
I didn't know that. Oh,
it was called Insight, INSITE. It's the International Network of Somewhere in Time Enthusiasts.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that you were
every newsletter had like interviews with actors from the movie or the director. And they still have a meeting there every year, and it's like a weekend. They watch the film, they have a dance, everybody dresses in the costumes and stays in the hotel, and they recreate the whole thing. And it's just to tell you the plot. I mean, it's not enough. It's also just a masterpiece of mood.
Yeah.
The whole movie is like a dream. It's like being inside a dream.
Sounds right.
Yeah, it's really great, and it's a cult film, and many people love it, but it's a shame it's not better known.
I agree.
Which is also true of Flash Gordon, which many people know. It's been restored and released by multiple DVD labels and given amazing treatment, and many filmmakers, prominent filmmakers, have come out and proclaimed it like their favorite movie. So it has gotten love. But like Somewhere in Time, it was a critical and box office bomb when it came out. It is unlike any other science fiction movie from the era, or even really before or since. It looks like a comic strip.
Yep.
It's like
bright
colors, gone insane.
It's amazing to look at. It's actually quite beautiful to look at in a completely opposite way from Somewhere in Time. It's super bright.
It features
saturated.
a score by Queen.
Yes. Another great score. Fantastic score.
Yeah, it's a crazy movie. And
Timothy Dalton's in it.
Yep, Timothy Dalton. Every scene in it is amazing, and it just if you discover it as a kid, you'll love it forever. Like, it was just, I reenacted that movie in my bedroom so many times.
Yeah.
Like the scene where they put their hand into the tree stump.
Yeah,
and
that's one of my rewindable moments, in fact.
Yeah, I would do that. Like, it was just,
yeah.
I just loved it. And I remember watching it. I really wanted to see it. And when it premiered on HBO, I grew up out in the country and we didn't have cable. And so we went into my aunt and uncle's house in town and to watch it. And on its premiere on HBO. And I remember sitting there with a room full of adults who were just heckling the movie.
And you were like,
mercilessly.
What? Yeah.
And I was just like, what is your problem? I remember thinking, like, what is your problem?
Seen.
This is obviously the greatest movie ever made.
The height of cinema.
What is your problem, people?
Well, there's a degree to which it is extremely cinematic. I mean, it really is an incredible piece of film to look at. This is another one of those movies that you brought me to that I hadn't seen as a kid. So both Somewhere in Time and Flash Gordon I saw as an adult, didn't see in the 80s, even though I was alive then. But I love it. I think it's amazing. This is something we rewatch over and over. And is this is that movie? Don't they show this in Britain on Christmas Day?
Yeah, it's a Christmas movie in Britain. So everybody in Britain
yeah.
knows it and loves it because it's like in America, I guess we have like
tradition.
James Bond month in November.
Or we used to have the Wizard of Oz every year.
Christmas, or E.T. was shown every year on Thanksgiving. It's that kind of, tradition for families in Great Britain.
It's incredible. I think you should see both of those movies, Somewhere in Time and Flash Gordon. Very different movies, but excellent. Was there anything, I kind of cut you off with the plot of Somewhere in Time. Is there anything else you wanted to say about what Somewhere in Time is about?
No, I don't want to tell. I mean, if anybody hasn't seen it, I don't want to ruin it. So
you need to see it.
Yeah. What were the other unsung gems that you had?
Well, I definitely had Somewhere in Time and Flash Gordon. Amazing. I had Xanadu. I love Xanadu.
Yeah,
I mean, I know
that was down in my so bad it's good list. But
okay, I kind of love it. I know
I
everybody
do too.
Thinks it's terrible.
I mean, how can you not?
But
it's insane. It's Olivia Newton-John.
I love it.
It's Gene Kelly. It's roller skating. It's disco.
I mean,
it's
muses.
It's Greek mythology
music everywhere.
It's wild. It's
really
so
wild.
It's
I know
so much
it's considered
skating.
like one of the most awful movies, but I've seen a lot of bad movies, and I really love Xanadu, and I would watch it over and over. So.
You're not alone. It's a cult classic.
Yeah.
There are people that love it, and we're part of that group.
Now I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but Private Benjamin I put mainly Goldie Hawn, Eileen Brennan. I mean, I love both of them. But I have to say, I don't remember the movie as well as I remember the TV show, which was on for a while. They made a sitcom out of it. Eileen Brennan was in it playing the same part.
Who was Private Benjamin?
I mean, honestly, I don't remember. But I remember,
like
I think Eileen Brennan stands out so much to me. I just love her. And I just needed to call it out. Because it's a female comedy, right? Which is, that's kind of cool.
I had that movie on my list too, but more thinking about it as a great performance than a great movie.
Yeah.
I think you'll find if you watch Private Benjamin now that it's
haven't
actually
seen
not
it
that
in
good.
a very long time, but I needed
Goldie
to call out.
And Eileen Brennan are great in it.
Yeah.
There's another movie kind of like that, which is John Cassavetes' movie Gloria.
Oh, that was
which
on the
is
list,
about
a
gangster moll who goes on the lam with this little kid who's been a witness to a shooting. His family has been executed, and she's trying to save him from the mob. And it's not a great movie, but it's an unbelievable performance by Gina Rowlands.
Oh, she plays the gangster moll.
It's just
I saw that on the 80s the 1980 calendar. I think that also came out this year.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it.
So I don't know. I'm just calling it out because I love those two. There's that. And it also became a sitcom, which people may not remember.
Did you have Alligator on your list?
I don't know it as well as you, but I know you wanted to. So please talk about Alligator. Tell the good people.
Alligator is based on the urban myth that of a kid who flushes a baby alligator, or his parents don't want him to have it. He wins it at a fair or something. I can't remember how he gets it, but his parents flush it down the toilet, and it ends up in the sewer, and it's exposed to whatever is in the sewers of New York, and grows to be about 60 feet long, like a dinosaur. And then it emerges from the sewer to take its revenge. And it's a B movie. It's written by John Sayles, which is the secret to its success. It has a really smart,
tell the folks
really
who John
funny
Sayles is.
Script. Oh, he's just a legendary indie writer.
What else did he?
/ filmmaker.
What's he famous for?
Oh, The Return of the Secaucus 7, Lone Star, 8 Men Out, Meituan. Like a bunch of indie movies.
A lot of folks might have heard of some of those.
not the kind of guy you would think would write a movie like that.
When you
And
told me
so-
that, I was like, what? Yeah,
so
it's
it's
weird.
like just 90% smarter than most
Yeah.
movies of its ilk. Robert Forster plays lead, and he's always great. It's just really fun. It had also one of my
was gonna
rewindable
say,
moments,
it's
which
got-
is a
yes,
scene where the
yeah.
alligator basically trashes this. I can't remember if it's a wedding or a
Our
garden party.
It's that type of party.
But but he blasts in there, and everybody's
Yep.
wearing their Sunday best, and this like 60-foot alligator comes in and just trashes the joint, eats a bunch of
Incredible.
people, wrecks a
Yep.
car. It's unbelievable, and it was made for like $5 in 1980, and you can tell, but it's just so much fun,
Yeah.
and it knows it has a real like tongue-in-cheek quality to it. It knows what it is, and it doesn't try to be more than it is, and it's just a lot of fun to watch.
I knew that was going to come up for you, and
Yep.
I knew that was going to be a rewindable moment for you.
Yep.
I just had one more thing to mention.
Mhm.
I haven't really seen, I've only seen parts of this. I think you've seen this more than I have, but it's worth a mention for a couple of reasons. The Divine Madness, it's basically a sort of concert comedy film by Bette Midler, right? And I just noticed more than one, maybe more than two concert films on the 1980 release list.
Yeah.
There's one from Wings, I believe, Paul McCartney's band. So I thought that was worth a mention.
Yeah, Divine Madness is hilarious. And if you only know Bette Midler from like Beaches and Wind Beneath My Wings and the kind of like stuff she did in the latter part of the 80s and the 90s, then this is like,
this will be a breath
this
of
is
fresh
the
air
way
to
to
you.
see like 70s Bette Midler
Where
when
she
she
came
was
from.
like Body and Crazy and doing like songs, Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy and stuff from the and
she would dress like
it's
a
ve- it's
mermaid,
very-
I believe.
It's very funny. She was hilarious. It's a very funny movie. The only other movie I had on the list, Unsung Gems, and it's one of my favorite teen movies from this era, is My Bodyguard.
Oh, I knew you were going to, Tell them about my Bodyguard.
I love My Bodyguard.
Yeah.
It's just it's an unbelievably sweet, small movie about a kid who is bullied by his school bully, played by Matt Dillon, and he recruits a troubled older kid from his class who kind of looks like a brute but is a very sweet guy to be his bodyguard, and they form this unlikely friendship, and it's just a very tender, lovely movie about facing your fears and not judging people by their cover, and it's just a great movie. And if you like Matt Dillon, he's great in it.
Well, and tell him who plays the bodyguard.
It's Adam Baldwin.
Yeah. From, if you know, Firefly.
Yeah.
He plays Jane in Firefly, and a bunch of, he's played many other parts over time. But
The only rewindable moment that I didn't mention that I had was the football fight from Flash Gordon. But frankly, like any scene from Flash Gordon
much in Flash
works
Gordon.
for me. But there's a scene in Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon, if you know the story of Flash Gordon, which hasn't changed since it was written in the beginning of last century, he was a football player, and he's taken against his will to the planet of Mongo, where he inspires people to rebel against the evil Ming the Merciless.
Yeah.
But there's a scene in the movie where he uses his football skills, his skills on the football field to fight against Ming's squadron of goons, and it's insane. It's even more insane than it sounds.
It really, you just have to see it. There's so many rewindable moments in Flash Gordon. I mentioned the stump scene where he on sort of Timothy Dalton's forest planet. That's a good one. The final battle. Anytime Brian Blessed yells or laughs in that movie is amazing and rewindable. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, he plays the Hawkman.
He plays the Hawkman, and he's great.
So I have just a handful of B movies or so bad it's good movies, really off the radar stuff that people might be interested in or that I liked.
Yeah, please.
I had Xanadu on that list.
I love that.
Popeye, the big budget Popeye from Robert Altman, which starred Robin Williams and Shelley Duvall as Popeye and Olive Oil. It's not a good movie, but it's a crazy movie, and taken in small doses, it's very entertaining and just one of those you have to see it to believe it kind of movies.
They sing in that movie, don't they?
Oh yeah, it's a musical. It's a musical.
Yeah.
Battle Beyond the Stars, which was Roger Corman's ripoff of Star Wars, where he took the plot of the Seven Samurai or the Magnificent Seven, and he transposed it to space. That's a fun B movie. And The Earthling, which was a film set in, I think it's set in Australia, where William Holden plays a guy who is old and has a terminal disease, and he plans to go out into the woods and die. Essentially, he's a very depressed man. And Ricky Schroeder, very little Ricky Schroeder, his family's in an accident, and he's left all alone out in the I know this sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Out in the outback, and William Holden kind of helps him find his way back to civilization and kind of rediscovers his sort of like
his
leash on life,
reason to live. You mentioned you describe these movies sometimes, and I'm just like, you're making that up. That can't be a movie.
Yeah, I mean, again, like not the kind of thing that would ever get made today, just because we just don't like. They would be like, "What IP is that based on? Like, what is there a superhero in that movie? Like, it's just too weird."
Well, beyond that, I'm like Ricky
idiosyncratic.
Schroeder and William Holden in the Outback. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
That's wild. Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah,
and it's got a title that sounds like a movie from space.
I mean, it made me think of like Starman or something. Yeah,
very strange. Yeah. All right, Lisa. So take us through the box office and the Oscars, and let's see if the audiences and the Academy got it right.
Okay. Well, how do you want me to do box office? You want to go 10-1 or 1-10?
Sure.
10-1. Okay. Number 10, highest grossing film of 1980, The Blues Brothers. 9 was The Blue Lagoon. 8, Smokey and the Bandit 2.
Ooh.
7, I mean, that made over $66 million, by the way. Coal Miner's Daughter at 7. Private Benjamin at 6. Any Which Way You Can at 5.
Oh, man. Have you seen any of those movies?
I haven't seen Any Which Way You Can.
I can't remember how many. There were like 2 or 3 of these movies that were just Clint Eastwood driving around with a monkey, with an
I've
orangutan.
Never seen any of those.
And that people loved them. Like,
yeah, I guess they did. Yeah.
There was like a whole, what do you want to call it? Like Southern hillbilly comedy.
Except Clint Eastwood doesn't play Southern.
No, but it was just like that, like truck driver, like Smokey and the Bandit. You said
sure.
Smokey and the Bandit 2 was in the top 10. Like it was just like, I don't know if there were a bunch of those. Roger Corman released a bunch of B movie versions of Smokey and the Bandit too. There were just a lot of those movies.
Yeah. I mean, let me just say, Any Which Way You Can is at number 5, made over $70 million and made more than the Blues Brothers.
Yeah,
which
$70 million in like 1980
money.
Yeah. It was a hit.
Airplane comes in at number 4. Stir Crazy comes in at number 3. 9 to 5 comes in at number 2. And surprise, surprise, The Empire Strikes Back comes in at number 1 at $209,398,025 in 1980 money.
So a lot of comedies.
A lot of comedy. And that was, if you remember from last time, if you hadn't listened for last time, that was one of the big themes of 1980 and the 80s in general, was that comedies kind of just came into favor. And there's a lot of them on our list.
Cool. So what did the Oscars do?
Okay, the Oscars.
And we're just going to look at like the top 5 or 6 categories.
Yeah. Well, then I'll go from sort of, I don't know, not exactly the bottom up, but song, the number one song, or not the number one song, the best song from 1980 was Fame by Irene Cara. Best picture was Ordinary People, which we discussed. Actor, Robert De Niro for Raging Bull. Actress, Cece Spacek for Coal Miner's Daughter. Supporting actor, Timothy Hutton in Ordinary People. Supporting actress, Mary Steenburgen in Melvin and Howard, something that didn't come up. And director, as we mentioned earlier, Robert Redford in Ordinary People. For Ordinary People.
Yeah. I mean, I think this happened a couple times to Scorsese, right? Yeah. Like he did Raging Bull and got beat by an actor in the directing category.
Right.
And then a decade later, he made Goodfellas and got beat by another actor.
Oh, who did he get beat?
That was the year of Dances with Wolves.
Oh my
Costner won Best Director.
That's insane.
And I believe that was Costner's first directing outing, and Ordinary People was Redford's first directing outing. So he got beat by a couple of like first-time actors.
Oh my goodness! And for Goodfellas, Goodfellas.
Yeah, I know.
My Lord.
It isn't that crazy when you remember that the biggest voting block in the Academy is the actors branch. Right. So they're going to vote for
the actors.
Their own. Yeah. So a lot of actors have won Best Director. That's a historical weird element of the Academy
Award. It's just strange.
But certainly
to hear.
like nobody's not that Ordinary People is not regarded as a fun film, but like nobody's remembering Ordinary People like with anywhere near the reverence that they are Raging Bull.
Yeah.
And Scorsese. But they got the actor right. I mean, it's an unbelievable performance, and De Niro is great, and it was back when he cared, and and was just knocking him out of the park. Every stepped up to the plate. Yeah. So, what were your top 10? And we should say that our top 10s are not necessarily like top 10 best movies of the year. They're like our top 10 favorite movies.
These are our
of
personal top 10s.
And the reason we're doing them that way is because I feel like doing a best list is just not that interesting, because that's sort of like just our guessing what.
I mean, you can go online, you can look at the AFI, or, you can look at other places to get a more,
this is just sort of like
professional top 10.
Personal take.
These are our personal.
Film as biography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a really hard time putting these in order. I don't know if I want to go first, but I'll go first if you want me to.
First if you want me to.
It doesn't matter. I'll go first.
Go from 10 up.
I feel like the higher up I get on the list, the less the order really matters. But anyway.
All right.
Number 10, I had The Shining. Okay, let me just tell you, these are like it's sort of about like how much would I go back and watch these movies. That's part of it. 10, The Shining. 9, Caddyshack. 8, Stunt Rock, because I love Stunt Rock.
Stunt Rock, yeah.
Shout out Brian Trenchard Smith. 7, 9 to 5.
Brian Trenchard Smith would be thrilled to hear that you would put Stunt Rock over Stanley Kubrick.
I mean, we've watched it so many times, way more than The Shining.
Yeah, it's great.
7, 9 to 5. 6, The Fog. I love The Fog. 5, Empire Strikes Back. Yes, every Star Wars fan will kill me. I love it, but 4, Flash Gordon. I actually watch it more. I love it. 3, Xanadu, because I'm crazy.
Did you just say Xanadu really quietly because you were so embarrassed that Xanadu ranked so high that you didn't want to say it?
I'm a little embarrassed, but I love it. Look, I love it. And we watch those music sequences a lot. Let's not lie.
I just like the idea that you could be speaking directly into a microphone and try to make your voice as tiny as possible.
All right, I'll just say it. 3, Xanadu. I will say it loud and proud. 2, The Blues Brothers. Amazing. And 1, Somewhere in Time.
Yeah.
I guess I feel a little nuts with my list, but I mean, again, this is a lot about like how often I go back and watch these for happy, fun times. Like it's, All
right, here's mine. You ready?
Yep. Let's hear it.
Number 10, Urban Cowboy. Number 9, The Fog. Number 8, The Shining. Number 7, Dress to Kill.
Oh yeah.
Number 6, 9 to 5. Number 5, Airplane. Number 4, Caddyshack. Number 3, The Empire Strikes Back. Number 2, Flash Gordon. And number 1, Somewhere in Time.
Awesome. I feel like I should have put Airplane on mine. Maybe that should have been on here, but...
Oh, Airplane didn't make your list?
It should have. I'm not really sure why I didn't. I must have forgotten. Anyway, totally rewatchable.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah.
Next time we see you, we'll be talking about 1981. We'll be
turning over the calendar to 1981, and we hope we gave you some ideas for stuff to watch, and come back next time.
Yep.
Bye. You've been listening to The Long Rewind. The program is produced by Dustin Morrow and hosted by me, Lisa Molinelli. If you enjoy the show, please consider hitting the subscribe button, leave us a good review on your podcast app, and tell your friends about the program. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.